Good afternoon สบายดีทุกคนครับ
Good afternoon. Let me speak in Lao instead. So please kindly use your headset receivers for translations. Well, it is my great pleasure to represent the government of Lao PDR, particularly the Department of State Budget, Ministry of Finance, to share with you regarding our fiscal stimulus, the lessons learned after COVID-19. And I would like to introduce to you the topic that I will share with you in a year-by-year basis, starting with 2020, where we have an outbreak of COVID-19. Then I will explain to you in 2021 regarding our mechanisms for COVID recovery and what will be our measures in terms of revenue and expenditure management. Allow me to move on to the first year of the implementation of our budget execution operation in 2020, which is the last year of the implementation of what we call National Socio-Economic Development Plan and our 8th National Socio-Economic Development Plan, which is an important plan that we have to achieve for 5 years, where we have quite high targets. However, at the end of 2019, we found the big picture that of the incoming of COVID-19. And in the quarter one of the year 2020, we experienced the issue of COVID-19 outbreak, community outbreak in our country. And the National Assembly already approved our initial budget plan with the growth of GDP at 6% per our plan, where the revenue is expected to reach 16% of GDP. But for the expenditure, we expect to reach 20% of GDP. And we expect that we would have a deficit at 3.7%. However, after the initial results as a result of COVID-19 impact, particularly to the fiscal space, we had to review the implementation of our total budget. And initially, we expect that the impacts of COVID-19 would affect the revenue side first, and our revenue declined by 3% of GDP, and we estimated to reach 13% of the GDP. But in terms of the expenditure as well, when we assess, we have to limit some of the spendings in order to readjust to redirect investments to areas where they need the budget, particularly the public health sector. So we adjusted from 20% to 18.9%. And when we make some saving in some of the public investment and some of the operation costs, and we estimate that we'll have a budget deficit at a 6.01% of GDP. But the actual execution showed that these numbers as a result of a number of policies when the National Assembly already endorsed our plan. We estimate the initial GDP, we can grow only 0.5%. That was the estimation by the World Bank, and is aligned with the number calculated by own government or by the Laos Statistic Bureau. However, some of the international organizations estimated that we would experience a negative number in GDP, but our calculation shows 0.5% during the COVID-19 outbreak. Regarding revenue, we are able to reach the target of our revenue based on our revised plan at 13%. And expenditure, we are able to make some more saving because of a number of measures in terms of expenditure, and I will be sharing with you the details in the following slides. We're able to make some saving for 0.9%, so that saving can be invested in the Ministry of Health, Prevention and Control of COVID-19 efforts. And in the total at the deficit, we estimated we would have a deficit at 6%, but we are able to manage at 4.56%. And that's related to the budget operation. In 2020, after that, given that situation, the government also imposed lockdown measures. So that's what we have done as other countries, maintain social distancing and other measures. as well as procuring vaccines and roll out vaccinations. And as I mentioned earlier regarding our revenue has reduced. At first, the plan is 21%. It was reduced by 5% of GDP. And this expenditure of 30% here, we are able to reduce operation cost. Operation expenditure or recurrent expenditure of some of the government and local areas, particularly for training and technical promotion budget line at the national and subnational level. But we don't reduce in the public health sector. We adjusted and we invested more in the health sector during that year. Moreover, we also proposed to the government to issue some of the policies for the measures to control the impact of COVID-19. I will share with you in the following slides. And during this time, we also have a policy to support the business entities, particularly businesses that are affected by the lockdown in the tourism sector. So we provide tax exemption for salary income for both private sector and public sector who have the salary less than 5 million KIP. So that's for 3 months of the exemption during the COVID, and also the income tax exemption for the micro enterprises for 3 months, and also exemption from other custom duties and taxes related to the medical instruments and supplies for COVID-19. So all totally duty-free, basically. We also defer some tax payments for the tourism industry and businesses for 3 months. And for the banking sector, we also reduce our compulsory reserve ratio from the banking sector so that they can inject more cash in the recovery of the economy. And we also provide some relief regarding the utilities, particularly water supply and electricity. At the same time, we also have a policy where we ensure social distancing, where we take turns. Staff going to office, they can rotate at the technical office, but at the management level, they have to be there every day. Particularly for the Ministry of Finance, our revenue collection departments, they need to work overtime to ensure that revenue collection can be optimized while maintaining the expenditure to ensure expenditure efficiency. And that was our focus. At the same time, we also, regarding revenue, at the end of 2020, we also relax some COVID control measures where people can still move, and therefore the Ministry of Finance has focused on try to collect revenue from what we call hidden potentials, where they are not affected by COVID-19. So we maintain that effort, and we take this crisis to improve our revenue collection efforts and modernizing our tax collection using new technology, including managing the expenditure efficiency. So we use all the measures that we can in order to operate our budget. Regarding the expenditure side, the government has attended to ensuring the efficiency, effectiveness of our expenditure, ensuring the transparency and saving as well. In 2020, we also have what we call the Prime Minister's Order 009 in order to make some saving in the expenditure. At the same time, we also reduce our recurrent expenditure for training and promotion, for travel allowance, for conference domestically and internationally. And we also reduce the organizing of the face-to-face meeting as much as possible and shift it towards video conferencing, and that can save a lot of costs as well. And we can see in the number that we're able to make some saving by 0.9%, and that 0.9% is invested in the health spending for COVID-19 control. At the same time, for the public sector expenditure, we also work together with the Ministry of Planning and Investment to review any newly approved investment projects related to any project that needs exploration and survey. So they defer for payment in 2021. So about 700 billion keep that we can defer some of the spending in order to manage our fiscal ability and the liquidity that we have. So that's a way we have control in terms of COVID-19 outbreak during the year 2020. Allow me to move on to the year 2021. Given that crisis, we also revise our own plan. GDP growth rate estimated and initially we estimate to grow at 4% of GDP. Revenues at 15%, expenditure 17%, and the deficit at a level of 2.7%. However, after execution operation in the entire year, the real numbers, the GDP growth rate is at 2.5%. We have not achieved our target, basically, approved by the National Assembly. We proposed 4% growth. Regarding revenue, we are able to achieve according to our plan approved by the National Assembly. It's actually, we overachieved a bit. We have a goal to reach 15% of GDP, but we are able to reach 15.6 GDP. Regarding expenditure, we are able to manage our expenditure at a level of the previous year, and we can make more saving. And then we audit more, and then we reduce some of the recurrent expenditure. Our plan is 17.25, but we execute a budget at 16%. We are able to make that saving to support the health spending for COVID-19 control. In the year 2021 is the first year of the implementation of what we call the new 5-year National Socio-Economic Development Plan, what we call the 9th NSEDP. NSEDP is also the first year that we are using all the measures at our disposal. In the year 2021, we also face another crisis, as you know. The second wave of COVID. 1 year after the implementation of the second quarter, and COVID has outbreak as a second wave in our country, and that affected our GDP growth. We estimated at 4, that's why we reached only 2.5%, and that was also one of the reasons that lead to the difficulties in reaching our numbers. And therefore, the government explored and proposed to the National Assembly, and we realized that we face economic distress and difficulties that are prolonged. We raise this as a national agenda, we call a national agenda on fiscal and economic difficulties for the entire country to collectively address these fiscal problems together, where the government issues the notification number 18 to the Ministry of Finance regarding closing all the revenue leakages, where the government has focused on this. Wherever there's a gap, where we know that there will be leakage, the government issued the measures to close that gap. And the Ministry of Finance translated that into 16 regulations in order to implement that, particularly closing the leakage in the fuel, shipping companies regulation, managing the imports of the consumer goods, as well as regulating the auditing firms, accountancy firms, in order to support the government further and to improve and disseminate the presidential decree number 002. So that's in terms of the revenue side. In terms of the expenditure, the Ministry of Finance also issued a number of legislation in order to manage our expenditure, particularly notification 2884, 3330, and other notification for the control of expenditure during the COVID-19 outbreak, and at the last 6 months of the year, and also in Q4, in order to be more stricter in terms of spending, to save from recurrent expenditure and use that to invest in the health sector in order to control and respond to COVID-19 that we would like to share with you in 2021. And these measures stimulate our revenue collection that enables our country, as I mentioned earlier, we are able to collect revenue more than what we have received approval from the National Assembly. So that also shows that we turn the financial difficulty to be a national agenda and create a revenue base, particularly where we have leakage, and to close that leakage to be able to collect all the revenue we can, and as reflected in a number that I have shared. In 2022, allow me to share the current year. It is another year, the second year of the implementation of the national agenda created in 2021, and to be stricter in terms of revenue collection. And our goal or our target is the same, the GDP growth rate at 4%, revenue is expected to receive 16.5% of GDP, expenditure 18%, deficit, fiscal deficit 1.61%. And these are targets. To implement that, the government has issued a number of measures in order to control the spending, particularly this year. We focus on identify any potential revenue sources to further close the leakages of revenue, implementing the Prime Minister's Order 18 and other 16 legislation of the Ministry of Finance. In the past, we focused in terms of the state asset, custom duties, tax, and enterprises, but then we focus only taxes and custom duties in terms of revenue collection. We also restructured what we call the vertical line of administration among the Department of Taxation, the Department of Customs, and the National Treasuries. And another reform that we have in 2022, we reform state-owned enterprise. State-owned enterprises where they are not making profits that are leading to a lot of debt, to ensure that they, particularly the 5 major state-owned enterprises, the Lao Electricity Company, EDL we call, the Lao Cement Factory, the Lao State Fuel Enterprise, and the Lao State Airlines or Lao Airlines, to reform and restructure these companies to be the key state-owned enterprise to be able to operate more profitably in terms of revenue side. In terms of spending, something new that happened in our country this year, the government has endorsed a policy for the prevention of what we call the prevention of luxury, the implementation of frugality number 05. In order to implement this year, we estimate that we will be able to control any unnecessary spending further in order to replenish things that we believe that we won't be able to implement. Lastly, I would like to share with you some of the recent numbers that I reached out to my colleagues. So far, in the 9 months of revenue collection, we are able to collect about 77% of our target of the year. Compared to the same month, once we have upgraded to be the national agenda, we have increased efficiency by 45% compared to the same time of last year. 45% increase in improvement. And for the expenditure, we're able to manage based on the plan of the National Assembly. And it is estimated that we are able to reach our target, to overachieve the target like last year, in fact, of our revenue collection. And this is my brief presentation regarding our post-COVID era measures in our country and things that we have made in terms of policy measures in order to make a leapfrog in terms of revenue collection to reach the target approved by the National Assembly in the next 5 years. That's it from me. Thank you.